Joe had 15, 16 camera positions on the car. That makes it even more difficult for Brad and Damson because they had a camera in their face. Their vision was partially obstructed. They're taking 5 Gs in those corners.
If you win, you are the absolute best in the world.
Joseph, you and Jerry obviously forged a great working relationship on Top Gun Maverick. How quickly after that was finished did the two of you guys start talking about this, and what were the initial conversations like?
I had reached out to Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion, who's I had been in contact with on Top Gun. That's a whole nother story. And just asked him if he were interested in helping be a part of a Formula One film, and had a conversation about the idea of this film, the potential, our ambition, creating the most authentic racing film we possibly could and telling an incredible story. That was 4 years ago, so it's taken about that long to get to this point.
Jerry, what excited you about this subject matter, and what did you see looming ahead of you as the things that excited you and that maybe were going to be the big challenges?
I made a racing car movie before, Days of Thunder, so I know how much fun it is to get that done. And it's to work with Lewis Hamilton, who's just amazing. Not only is he one of the most gifted athletes ever, he's a great gentleman. So just being a part of this team and just going back on a track again and working with Joe was the thrill of it.
Talk a little bit about what your approach was going in. What were your sort of guiding principles for how you were going to shoot it to achieve that?
Well, Lewis had said to me at the beginning he had never seen a movie capture what it really feels like. And the reason is because motion picture equipment by nature is heavy and bulky. And that is the opposite of how you get something to move fast on the racetrack. Another person that Lewis introduced me to was Toto Wolff, who is the team principal of Mercedes AMG F1 team. Very smart guy. And we had dinner with him one night, and when I explained that we wanted to build race cars and integrate cameras into them, he said, don't build a movie car and try to make it fast. He said, start with a race car and then add your film equipment to it. So that idea was what we did. We ended up buying 6 race cars from Dallara, which is a race car manufacturer in France. We sent it to the Mercedes F1 factory in the UK, built complete custom bodywork to make it look just like a Formula One car. It was actually a Formula 2 car, which is just one class below. And they integrated all of our prototype cameras into the bodywork. So these ended up being completely bespoke machines built for shooting a racing movie, capable of going 200 miles an hour. And then Brad and Damson had to learn how to drive them. And so that was the next challenge. That was the next 4 months.
What kind of training did Brad and Damson have to go through to prepare to play these parts?
It was a 4-month process. These cars are monsters. You just don't climb in one of these cars and drive them. There's 10 teams, 2 drivers to every team. These are the best 20 drivers in the world. If you gave them the same car, they'd be within 1 second of each other. That's how fast these guys go. It was a real daunting task for Brad and Damson to get up to that kind of speed, and that's why it took them so long. They were going 180 miles an hour in those straights and then hitting a corner and braking down to 50. But Joe had 15, 16 camera positions on the car. He also would only use 4 at a time. That makes it even more difficult for Brad and Damson because they had a camera in their face. So their vision was partially obstructed. They're taking 5 Gs in those corners. So they really put the effort and the time into it. But with all the things we did, which is all great, it's about the characters, the story, and the emotion.
I was going to shout out Carrie Condon. Carrie Condon, and I think that's obviously nominated for the Banshees of Inisherin and done so much other work, but I think the way that Joe and Jerry and Lucy Bevan and her team cast the film, that choice is emblematic of a level of ambition and quality and just how inhabited all the performances were.
The scale of this thing just blew my mind, and I'm looking at these races, and obviously you guys are shooting on real racetracks during real races. I mean, talk a little bit about the logistics of how you guys, first of all, got Formula One to agree to let you do this.
Well, it took us about a year to convince Formula One to lean in. But the first thing we did is we went to F1 and Stefano and told them what we were going to do. And he leaned in. He understood how we were going to make this movie and how good it was going to be for the sport. Then he had to convince everybody else, like we did. They weren't there to make them look bad or to be the villains. But in the end, they were our partners. They saw us over 2 years at all the races, all 9 races, all the time. And we were just part of their family.
When you're shooting, you can't have, Brad Pitt on the racetrack during an actual race. So when are you actually shooting his stuff?
So what we would do is we would get little slivers of time between practice and qualifying sessions. So sometimes that would be 15 minutes, sometimes it would be 5 minutes. Brad and Damson would have to be in the cars, engines warm, tire warmers on, in the pits, and the moment the real Formula One practice would end, they would go out, and we'd have 2 cars going, 4 cameras on each car, so I'd have 8 cameras rolling. They would have a few minutes to shoot their scenes. The crowd, the signage, the energy of the Rio Grand Prix is there. The only thing is all the other F1 cars are not on the track with them. They're Apex cars driven by our stunt drivers around Brad and Damson. In those shots, I would reskin the Apex cars to be Ferrari, Mercedes, whatever I needed them to be for that scene. And then we would shoot the race itself and look for moments in the race very close to what we needed for our story. And then I would put the Apex car in to replace one of the real cars during the race. Through the magic of editing, it feels like Brad and Damson are in the race, but it's a little Hollywood magic.
One of the first times that we put Brad and Damson in the car, it was at Silverstone in front of 140,000 people who didn't know they were in the car. And I know the guys, both actors were nervous because the last thing they wanted to do is spin out in front of all those people there. We were actually on the grid with all the drivers in their cars, so we had like 6 minutes to shoot one of the opening scenes in the movie. And Joe rehearsed it for 2 days to make sure he had it perfect because he didn't want to do it helter-skelter. He wanted to plan out every shot, make sure he got all his dialogue and got all the coverage on it. So we had 6 minutes, and then the race started. We had to get off the track, lose our cameras, and the race went off.
One of the cool things about this movie is it's got enormous scale, but it still feels handmade and personal. And I'm curious how you guys, when you're managing a production like this with so many moving parts and thousands of people and so much ambition, how do you make sure everyone's on the same page and making the same movie from beginning to end?
You can't make a movie by yourself. It is the effort of 1,000 people. My job is to make sure that we're all going in the same direction. It's just selecting great people to work with. I think that's always been Jerry's mantra, and it was a big family. We felt like we were a Formula One team. We had a great time shooting it, and hopefully that shows.
Dee Dee Gardner and I, our entry point was through Brad, but I think he was a sort of a North Star for us in a way too, I think, because, he had so many amazing reference points, whether it was The Natural or Hoosiers or sort of movies that have a classic quality about them. He brought a kind of tone and emotionality and an integrity to the whole proceeding that I think was inspiring to everyone.
Yeah, Brad wasn't just an actor in this. He was a producer. He was there through the entire script process. He was in that room with Lewis Hamilton, Joe, myself, and Jeremy for, I think it was between 8 and 10 hours, just going through page by page. And he was involved in editing. He was involved in just every part of making this movie. And he's a great partner, as you can see on the screen, what terrific work they've all done.
I want to thank you for coming out and talking with me about it. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.